Um, so I'd like to welcome all of you today to today's Governance Frameworks workshop session brought to you in collaboration with Lisa and Matthew Weber. It's our second session in continuation of the commercial business model session that we had yesterday. Quick intro again for people who did not join the last session. Matthew is a lead alum. He's one of the world's foremost experts in transformation and global supply chain. He has led the transformation and operations of many multi-billion-dollar organizations across the globe. And he's also an author of the best-selling book, Fit for Disruption: How to Transform Your Business and Thrive in Times of Rapid Change. Regarding Lisa, most of you already might know, but still a brief intro. The lead incubator and startup accelerator, or LISA, was founded by Stanford GSB participants for the community. It's designed to bring together innovators and startup founders to incubate ideas to MVP and large scale ventures globally. Myself, I'm Deepthi Pava, founding partner at LISA, and the other founding members for LISA are Hira Dangol, Goodman, Pavel Islitsky, Misha Baikov, and Joe Anthony. We at LISA are always striving to bring forward workshops and engaging sessions through collaborations with wonderful groups here at LEAD, as well as the very talented leaders within our community for the benefit of the LISA cohort members to help aid their journey from idea to MVP. And for today's session, like yesterday's again, we have partnered with Matthew to design this session in specific for cohorts needs on understanding how to build good governance controls into your ventures from the start. We would put the recording for both the sessions on Workplace in case you missed one. And Matthew will also share workbooks and templates with the participants, which we will send you together for both sessions as per email. So Matthew, here you go, all yours.
Thank you, Deepthi, and thank you for, again, the kind introduction, and also thank you for the invitation to do these, I guess, workshops. It is a privilege to do it with Lisa, and Lisa's doing wonderful things, particularly in the Stanford startup community, and so it's certainly great to be here. What I might just ask, if everyone, we will sort of at times come on and we'll try and have more interactive, but just so, would everyone mind just muting while we move on? Just so, because sometimes there's a little bit of interference in the sound, so if everyone can mute, that would be super. And of course, I hope everyone's safe and well at the moment. I know things have been quite challenging around the world, so we've been quite fortunate here in Australia, but I know, as we were chatting just earlier on, it's still a challenge for other parts in the world. So my thoughts go to you. Today, both sessions have some finance concepts in them by nature, and what I want to do just at the start is just say this is very general information, and it's more to help you understand what the concepts are around commercial frameworks and governance, but please don't take it as advice. It's not advice, and if you do need that, make sure you go and get some professional support. Deepthi did say that she'll share the workbooks and the recordings, and I think, I can't remember whether you said, Deepthi, but we'll also make an e-copy of my book available for you as well. So what you should have at the end of this is some workbooks, some really good templates or canvases that you can use and potentially adapt, and then you'll have the book. So hopefully that will help you on your journey. Now, governance. Governance is probably not the most it's probably not going to be at the top of your list in terms of things that you want to really focus on, or really spend an hour of your life going through training. So I actually thank you for coming along to it. But it is a very, very important concept for your startup. And it's one of those things where, particularly whilst you're at idea to MVP stage, that you, and I know for those that were on the call yesterday or on the session yesterday, that some of this will be repeated. But what's really important at the idea to MVP stage is that you actually now have the opportunity to build in some of your governance structures to make things really work for you over the long term. But also some of this structure can also support you in the short term as well. And when we hear the word governance, we probably think of bureaucracy and red tape and meetings and all of that sort of thing. For me, it's actually quite the opposite. It's actually about being very targeted and deliberate about what you do and what you spend your time on from a structural point of view of the business. And it's about making sure that you're focused on the right things. We can also, particularly because idea to MVP, we can sometimes get caught up in the idea itself. And we do get an emotional attachment to the concept. So it's important that we're able to step back and have a view that protects ourselves from that, and also protects the people that we're looking to support, you know, whether that be our customers, our communities, or whatever it might be. But in today's session, we'll go through 4 fundamental areas, and we will work through a couple of templates just to help you get the flavour. And the topics that we'll cover will be what are some of the key governance controls that you should have, risk and opportunity planning. We'll talk a little bit about business cases, and we'll do today's at a very high level, but obviously we'll go down. And then just having that general financial management overlook, or, you know, some of the accounting disciplines for you to just to be in top of your mind. And I do want to touch, on this, that a key element of strong commercial performance is what we discussed yesterday, is around having strong governance and control systems in place. Now, we spoke yesterday that strong commercial performance will mean that you would have a strong, a strategy. I think we got someone getting some feedback, so if anyone can make sure they're on mute.
Sorry, that was me. Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. It happens. So we need a strategy and a strategic plan. We need a governance framework. We need to make sure that we've got a business intelligence system in place, you know, KPIs and visual measurement. And we also need to make sure that we have control of our P&L and balance sheet. So they're the key elements of commercial performance. Now, again, just want to make the point that this is around wanting to help you go fast, and to make sure that that you have the control in your startup or your business or whatever it might be for you to go forward. And you just want to make sure that you have those foundations nice and set. We are obviously living in potentially, you know, the greatest disruption in 100 years with COVID. And I do apologise by this slide, by the way. It's all the text should be in a white colour, so my apologies if it is hard to read. But hopefully it's at the moment we're just having the general chat. But we need these disciplines in place which will help us in times of disruptions. Obviously, we've had COVID, which was quite unique, and you know, for some organisations, it wouldn't have mattered what governance controls had in place. It wasn't going to help. But in most cases, what I've seen, and certainly the organisations that I've been working with, is the ones that had a strong foundation and a strong base were the ones that were able to deal with COVID. Now, we have to remember COVID's on top of our mind, but COVID is not the only disruption that's amongst us. We still have digital disruption. We still have aging populations. We still have a lot of environmental issues that we're dealing with, where we've got so many things that can potentially disrupt us at a macro level and a micro level. And again, just making the point that this governance gives you the strength and the control to do it. But governance is also around developing strong and efficient processes of work. And let me give you an example of that, particularly the idea to MVP stage. You could, if you had a strong process, you could turn out a number of MVPs, or you could be able to have a really strong and efficient process around building your a bit around getting the right people to help to ideate, to conceptualize what it is, to actually build this, to put it out, get feedback. What do you do with that feedback? How do you then reiterate and then push it back? And if you actually don't have a nice and efficient process for that, it becomes very loose, and you may actually see that you, first of all, miss a lot of opportunity in it, and second of all, you may not be able to go as fast or be able to see what you're meant to be seeing, because you don't have that structure around you. And that's why a lot of the tools that, why a lot of the design thinking tools are so powerful, because what that does is it gives people that structure. And when we talk about governance controls, we're not talking red tape. It could be as simple as making sure you're using some of the canvases or some of the tools that you've already that you've been provided with. Now, of course, when we talk about a process in that sense, we're not talking about depleting the creativity and the innovation that comes with it. We're talking about a process that, when you do get great minds together, that's what they can focus on. That they can focus on the creativity and the innovative aspects. You do not want this framework to paralyze your decision-making framework. And I know that I've done that to death at the moment, but also governance is also, or these controls give trust. They give trust to your customers or potential customers. It gives trust to your people. And importantly, it gives trust to your investment community. If you're seeking investment, if they know that you're in control, I mean, I don't know if anyone's got in a car with someone that's not a very good driver, and you think, oh goodness, and you almost shut your eyes. It's a very uneasy feeling. But if you're in a car with someone that's very confident and very in control of what they're doing, then your trust in them goes up. So that's a lot of the why, I guess. But if we think about what am I actually talking about here? What are some of the good controls that you can have that are not overbearing and that can help you at this stage? And again, I would love to give you a fixed, it's step 1, it's step 2, it's step 3, it's step 4. But it's actually not that. Some of this is going to be very much dependent upon where you're at in your journey, how big your concept is. Obviously, if you're working on a multi-million-dollar MVP, your level of planning and budgeting will be so much more than if you're, I don't know, designing a new widget that's that's a couple of $100. It's a complete different paradigm or perspective that you'll look through things. But if we talk, if we just bring it back to, regardless of what it is or how big it is, there are some fundamental disciplines that you should have. Now, that would be appropriate financial budgets, reporting and processes. So you absolutely should be thinking now about, for you to get this concept from idea to MVP, what does that cost? What do you need? What resources do you need? And then importantly, what do you think that may look like after? And it doesn't mean it has to be right. It just means you might be 60% directionally correct, but it sets a base and it sets your assumptions and helps you start to work. And what you can do is you can actually iterate your budgets. A thing that I see work very, very well, no matter how small, is having an investment council or your own board that can independently review the investment decisions and actually test you on your assumptions. So when I work with many startups and scale-ups, one of the first things I encourage them to do is to surround themselves with people that meet periodically to look to basically sit above the whole process, just to give it a sense check and to make sure that it's a sound thing, it's a sound opportunity. Whatever you do, and this is even when you're small, you need clear accountabilities and delineations for the roles and what people are doing. Now, for some of you, that just may be you, right? And that's fine. But for many of you, you may have a partner, or you may have 3 or 4 people involved. I mean, like Deepti was talking about Lisa and the founders that are in that. But each of those founders have taken on a particular role. Some of it will overlap, and it doesn't have to be prescriptive or too prescriptive. But people are certainly in a pattern of where their accountabilities are and what their delineations should be. Now, no matter what, you should be working through constantly on ethics and responsible business decision making. And I think that's a journey that you want to start very early on and set the expectation, not just for you and your partners, but as you're getting in suppliers or people that you partner with. You want to make sure that you're aligned, so that whatever you're putting out to the world is aligned to your values, and you need that in place. Obviously, we're living in a world where there's lots of data and information around. We need to make sure that we safeguard that. I mean, I was at this event last night, and although it was at a big scale, it was a company called Toll here, which is the biggest logistics and supply chain company in the world, in Australia and Asia, I think now, and they're owned by Japanese Post, but they were subject to 2 cyber attacks, in the last 12 months, and pretty serious stuff. And I was speaking to one of the directors, and he said one of the things that was really concerning to him was so much, yes, the business interruption, and that was terrible, but they then had access to his passport, his wife's passport, his children's information, all this sort of stuff. So that's sort of getting, pretty scary and serious. You want to have a risk management framework. So you want to actually sit down and go, what are my risks? What are my internal risks? What are my external risks? How could I potentially, work with those? But come back every now and then, and this is where I think that investment council can support you, or your board, is periodically review the effectiveness of those frameworks. As you get bigger, you want to make sure you're remunerating sensibly and fairly, and you want to make sure that whatever you're doing, that it can be independently tested, and that you're not just putting in things that you can circumnavigate any well. And I think this is back up to the clear accountabilities and delineations for the roles, but make sure you know who's responsible, accountable, and even, almost from a project perspective, who do you need to communicate with and who do you need to inform? So as an example, you may have a responsibility to put an ethical framework in place. You might be working in the healthcare industry, like Deepti is at the moment, and she may have certain she might have a responsibility to pull that together. Her CEO might have the accountability for the overseeing of that, but that may need to be communicated with healthcare professionals, or you may need to inform government in that. So just think about making sure you know who you need to communicate with. Now, this can be, is there any questions at the moment? I just thought I'd quickly ask. Feel free to jump in and stop me at any moment. But what I've got here is a control canvas. And this is not meant to be exhaustive. This is meant to get you to start thinking about what are the key attributes or key controls that you need to make this work. And secondly from that is, hopefully it can help you understand what control gaps you have in place. And it's a little bit of a risk management exercise, I guess, from that perspective. But I got there around the meeting cadence, and that's very important, because not because I want you to write a list of meetings that you need to have, but more to focus you, because one of the things that can really distract you at this stage of your business is you're meeting with a whole lot of people, and you want to make sure you know why you're meeting with them and you're getting the most out of that. And then there's that RACI, so that responsibility, accountability, who you communicate with and who you inform. So just having a think about who you need to communicate with, what you need to communicate to them, and where they fit into the picture. So I've got one sort of semi-filled out just as an example. The next exercise or two, I'll get some more interaction into it. But I've come up with a hypothetical, and my apologies if it's a real business, but it's, this was just me thinking about it when I created the template. I've used a company, a pretend company called Paw Prints, and their value proposition is a marketplace providing pet owners with access to the best quality pet service providers that create a fabulous life for their four-legged friends. And so then let's assume that we were starting that and we were along the journey, and would have to think about what are the types of controls that we would need. And we'll need to have financial controls and have a financial system in place, because you're obviously dealing with, with a lot of financial information. You'll need standard operating procedures. You need to know how you're working in the business, and how it works, how you work with the supply side in that marketplace, how you're working with your customers. What is the process? You'd want to make sure that you've got strong data security controls. You'd want to make sure that you've got secure payments system in place. You'd want to make sure that there was a quality audit program potentially, and that you could, sign off processes. Now, that doesn't make the list exhaustive, and that's just a dump. But that's, again, the exercise. It's just to get you to think about, if I was doing this and put it in the context of your business, what are the controls that you should need? And again, I'll use Deepti as an example. If she's working in the healthcare industry, she may have some government regulation controls or some compliance issues that need to be met, and that they need to be included. Now, if we then look at the control gaps, in this instance, it could be qualifying the pet service providers, making sure that they're competent and they've got a particular level of standard, that you validate the customer complaints and ratings. Like, say, if it was an Uber thing where you got to give a 5-star rating, or if there was a complaint, but you might have some people out there that are just nasty people, and how do you manage that? How do you secure your systems from hacking and fraudulent transactions? So these might be the ones that the organization has identified as key control gaps that they need to close in on. The meeting cadence I've just sort of put on the left-hand side. So think again about what you need, when, how you need it. Now, this is probably for something a bit bigger than an MVP with that type meeting cadence, but just think about who you're meeting with, what and why. And if you look at the RACI there, and if we're just talking about our, I guess our rhythm of reviewing financial results, just to give you a flavour of how the RACI will work, the financial accountant might be responsible for pulling it together. The ops manager, and I'm talking about the result, pulling the actual reports together, not the operational results. And that might need to be consulted with the operations manager. CFO might be accountable for the delivery of those reports. And of course, you would inform the board of what's going on. Like with yesterday's session, there's a number of questions and exercises to go through. You can do those in your own pace. You'll have access to this this workbook, which we'll provide later. So I guess the question now is for you, and in the context of your business, and you don't have to answer this now, and I am mindful of time, so I do have a couple of exercises to go through, but I really want you to think about, in the context of your idea to MVP, what does control mean to you? What would make sense for your organization? And as I was saying before, there's no right or wrong answer. It can be this level or that level, depending on what your type of business is. But you really need to think about what makes sense for your business and the stage that it is. My only ask of you is that you make it important now. And it doesn't mean to say that it becomes distracting. It just means that you have strong controls in and around you. Balancing risk with opportunity. I talk about this a lot because I see lots of risk managers and risk departments and risk people and risk this and risk that, and for good reason. And that's a very fundamental of good governance. But I also include in that opportunity management. You know, we should have an opportunity manager, an opportunity department, an opportunity whatever, like we do for risk. Because what happens is we actually leave a lot of value on the table quite often, and that's a hidden risk, right? It's a risk that you actually, I mean, if you know, you could potentially have missed a multi-million-dollar opportunity, and if that was the other way, that you had it and lost it, you would think very emotionally very different about it, as if it was the other way. So I want you to think about making sure that you've got a structure in place to capture your opportunities. I'll try and scoot through these pretty quickly, but you need to be able to make sure that you can identify. So if I think specifically around risks, you need to be able to identify your risks, but importantly that you have a mitigation for those risks, that you understand, if this happens, we will do this, or we will go along this path. You can't mitigate every single risk. It's impossible. It's impossible to know what exactly is going on. But what you need to know is that you need to know when something goes wrong, regardless of what it is, how would you respond? You know, maybe it's a really bad example, but you know, if you look at the pandemic, there would have been health authorities and governments that they knew at the time that a pandemic hit that they would have to activate certain functions within their government or within their health departments or whatever it might have been. But they would know that they had to turn it on straight away, or might be a surgeon that they know if the I don't know, or a hospital, if the power was to go out, they would have a generator or something like that. As I was saying before, put as much time into opportunity management, and you need to have the ability and the structure within your organization to be able to respond as quickly to an opportunity as quickly as you can respond to a risk. And of course, have a positive mindset about this. And like most things in business, it's actually, there's very much the part around which is very quantitative and very process driven. But what I find, and certainly my experience working with my clients, is that the most the most successful businesses are the ones that have the mindset right, and that they have the culture right and the leadership right. And that's around having that positive mindset, that risks are inherent. It's a bit like, you know, there's a risk of getting hit by a car when I walk across the street, but I'm not going to stay inside because of that. I'll just be aware of it, and I won't let it stop my life. It could be an exaggerated example, terrorism. I'm not going to stop going to, you know, we had a situation in Melbourne a year ago, I think, where there was an attack in our Burke Street Mall, which is a shopping centre precinct. But I'm not stopping going there. I'm just aware of it, and I know what the risks are, and I'll just have to manage through that. And again, I keep making the point that opportunity management is an organisational skill. This is taking some time, so just make sure that you're constantly training and developing in these areas. Think about the various scenarios that can play out, and then make sure that you've got the contingency plans in place. This is really important, again, because you're that MVP to idea stage, and even as you progress it along, you are going to have an emotional attachment to your concept and to your idea, and also the risks that are involved. So make sure you get independent people, whether it's maybe not your mum that's going to tell you everything you want to hear, or something like that, but make sure you've got someone solid that can give you independent advice, but it's also understanding that you're wanting to create opportunities. So you don't want someone that squashes you and goes, no, don't do that, but you also want someone to say, hey, look, Matthew, you're on a path to a train wreck, or have you thought about this? So make sure you get different perspectives. And make sure as you build in your structure that your team and the people in your business can proactively manage those risks and opportunities. If you under-resource things or put stress on things, they will miss things. It will create its own level of risk, and resourcing is fundamental. So, I mean, of course, you can be resourceful in your resourcing, but just make sure that you don't try and always be doing 120% all of the time. And again, just that bit around being comfortable that the world is in an unstable place anyway, but that is where the opportunity is. That is absolutely where the opportunity is. This is a bit of a, there's hundreds of risk templates out there, and some are in spreadsheet format. This I've tried to put into a little bit more of a canvas format. It should be very self-intuitive, and, there's 3 primary risks here. You can keep filling this out. You might have 10 risks, you might have 1 risk. I don't know. Again, it's situational on your business. But if I again go back to the example of paw prints, and I was thinking about some of the risks there. I had systems being hacked and potentially shutting down the marketplace, or leaking sensitive data. What would the impact of that be? It'll be high. What's the likelihood? Medium. It's not low, because I've seen this thing happen all the time, but we think, we don't think it's too high. The person responsible is perhaps the chief technology officer. Now, what would the impact? Well, the impact could potentially be so severe that it would destroy trust with the customers and suppliers if you had sensitive data going out, or if they shut down the marketplace completely, it could actually be the end of the business. So what do you do about it? What are the mitigations? And you can have a data recovery plan in place. You could have, more system security features, encryption of data. There'll be many things that you can do.
Matthew?
Yeah.
I have one question. So if you define all the risk scenarios, right? When should you check back on them, right? I mean, you define them, right? Should it be monthly, weekly?
Yeah.
Because you probably will not always think about them in your daily business, right?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's whilst I'm not trying to move away from the giving you a concise answer, it depends, and it depends on where you're at, how serious it is. something like this, you would want to make sure that the controls could still be levels of control that sit under this, and that you would potentially be checking hourly. You know, you would want to make sure that the system was sending you a signal that it was protected at all stage, or you would want an alert to tell you if something had opened up. But equally, I would at the very least, as part of your monthly review, I'd be certainly pressure testing with your independent people, pressure testing that you've got these controls well in hand, and importantly, the ones where you've identified you've got gaps in your controls. You want to make sure that you can control that you're on track to planning those, and you would as you would sitting down looking at your profit and loss statement on a once a month, you know, period, you should be doing the same with your risk attributes. So I thought now what we could do is potentially, and I'm probably going to lose the function. Oh, yeah, I can probably come out of this, but could we maybe talk about using that that paw prints as an example? What would be another risk, and we can potentially work that through. What could be a risk that a company, a marketplace like that would have? Oops. I mean, I'm happy to. That's the wrong one. Sorry.
I mean, please jump in, guys. If anybody has, wants to take their own startup idea here, it's the opportunity.
Yeah.
So.
We can. I mean, I'm happy to keep talking. And I can go through it. And I am mindful of time, but if you just want to work through one, we could do that and just put it in here. We can either use your own example, or we could use, the paw prints as an example.
Hi, Matthew. This is Kate. Hi, everyone. It's
hey,
early.
Kate, how are you?
I'm just waking up, 6:30 a.m.
Good morning.
Good morning. Matthew, could I try?
Yeah. Go for it.
Okay. The risk for my company is there is stigma around mental wellness, mental health.
Yep.
And what I'm offering is to talk about it and talk about depth psychology.
Yep.
The public isn't aware of yet.
Yep.
So the risk is about timing. And how do I, ride the wave and apply gently to the public who already have a stigma around this topic?
Okay. So I hear that. Could I perhaps try to reframe it for you, just to put it into a risk perspective? Is the risk potentially because there is this lack of awareness, or there's this stigma around it, that the way that you deliver your offer could potentially alienate your customers or not accelerate as quickly?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So we could potentially, it's the wrong words, alienate our customer. Yeah. Which is actually the impact. So the impact of this, if you don't get this right, Kate, how much of an impact is that to your business? If you don't get that part right,
then I won't have customers.
Yep. Would it be high? Would that would be a high impact, or is that a low impact?
That's a high impact. I need to get the message right.
That's fundamental to your business proposition, right?
Right.
So we'll do high there. Now, so then if we go, what's the likelihood of this though, Kate? Like, is this with you every day, and or is this just, or can you cope around this? Because can you cope can you still build a business with, you know, I'm assuming that there would be people that would already, that the stigma, that they would be comfortable with mental health and seeking support. So is the likelihood that this issue impacts your business, is it a high, medium or low?
You mean what is actually out there, based rather than perceived potential.
Yeah.
Potential.
Well, how much of it, maybe another way of asking you in this example is how likely is this going to affect your business?
If I don't get the message right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Highly likely. Yeah.
Okay. And again, this is subjective, everybody. It's not, you know, and Kate has a very unique business as well, right? So we're talking about a professional services business. We're talking about something that's dealing with mental health. It's quite unique. It's not a product. It's not, you know, product in the sense of it's a, you know, it's a water bottle or something like that. And they had to make, the risk could have been around the manufacturing process or making sure that the lid doesn't fall off and choke someone or whatever it might be. Okay, so in this instance, Kate, because it's just you, I'm assuming it's you. You're the person responsible for making sure that you sort this out.
Yes, I am.
And but of course, if you had, you know, other people in your business, you could assign them to that. Now, the impact here is, you know, we could alienate, which we've set over to the left there. We could alienate the business, alienate our customer, and not get traction overall. Now, you can tidy up the words of this, and to the question that was asked before, how often do you look at this? Well, you know, I'd look at this once a month, how we're going against it. But you might actually get more clarity on the risk, and you might be able to articulate it a bit better. And I think the purpose here and the objective here is just to get it out, just to get it on paper, just to have it thought through, because I can guarantee you now, Kate is going to walk away from this session and she'll be thinking about this, and she'll be thinking about how she can, so it's just about bringing it top of mind. Kate, how can you overcome this?
I would work with the brand strategist, I'd say. I need to get the story right, and also do study on what language works for what demographic.
Yep. So that to me, and maybe a tailor message to demographic. So that to me is very a well articulated way of how you can respond to that risk that is sitting in your business. So it can be just as simple as that. And Kate may want to rework that, go into the next level of details, understand what brand strategist, what that may look like. But just at the conceptual stage, this is it. And for me, that works, and it should work for you as well. So I'd really think about doing that in your business. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Kate, to that?
Excellent, Matthew. Thank you. I'll be thinking about this.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. If I may add something to this as a solution, Kate, one thing you could think about is also having psychologists really come up on your show or whatever you're doing, for instance, right? And really kind of, you know, kind of talk about issues that exactly build credibility. And that's also another way of, yeah. And I really love this, Matthew, what you're doing, because it's like, at least you think about the risk, then you also think about how to, you know, overcome that. So yeah, great example.
Yeah. And as I said, there'll be layers of this. You can come down, but you at least have to be thinking about it. And that's the point. If you're at MVP stage, you need to be thinking like Kate is. And I know Kate's a little bit further than MVP, but you need to be thinking about what it can bring this undone. Yeah. And how do I manage this? So I think that was actually a good exercise from that point of view. It doesn't have to be, the risk doesn't, and you know, big organizations will be putting in their risk plans. If another pandemic happens, this, that, and the other will happen. You don't have to go to that level at this time. I mean, you may want to, it's up to you. But for here, it's just about, like the risk that Kate pointed out, what is very pertinent to her business. And that communication message is very important to her business. Now, here's the thing I want you to do.
Oh, Matthew,
Yes.
could I give one? Could I thank Deepti and before you go there, and thank you, Deepti. I have secure Dr. Fred Luskin. He's the professor of Stanford. He will be attending our summit on the 29th of PST time, and I've got one medical doctor aligned. So thank you for that idea. You have verified this position, and thank you, Matthew. Go ahead.
No worries, no worries. Now, I am mindful we've literally got 10 minutes to go, and I apologise that this has taken some time. So what I'll try and do, I'm happy to stay on and go over, but I'll try and move through it as quickly as possible. This here is the key opportunities part. I want you to put as much time into, when you've gone through all your risks, I then want you to do the same with all the opportunities that you've got. Now, the test with your opportunities is to make sure that you don't get overwhelmed and that you can actually prioritize them. Okay. But again, place as much focus on your opportunities as you risk, and make sure that you're focused on the right opportunities. Like, for instance, Kate might go, I want to expand into Australia and the US. That might be a key opportunity, but it may not be sensible to do right now. And it might be just you park that. The key opportunity for Kate would to be get a Stanford professor on her webinars and on her team. That is a massive opportunity. Make it happen now. So work through that. And if that wasn't being thought about from an opportunity point of view, you may miss it. I'll put here again the Paw Prints. You know, I use the thing there that 27% of owners admit to having professional photographs taken of their pets. Well, if I had a pet marketplace and if I had that information, I would say that was an opportunity. And you know, it could potentially be a game changer for my business. The difficulty probably wouldn't be that hard in the context of the business that I was creating and the marketplace and the capability I'd already developed. You know, some of the actions that I'd need to do is validate the insights, build the supply base, and develop into the platform. So that's so do that on the opportunities as well. But work through what those are for you. Now, I am going to move through this pretty quickly, and I'm actually okay now that, not that we've run out of time, but this does take some time to get through. So to work through the physical examples are actually complicated and would take more time. So I'm more than happy to work with anyone on you know, if they need to develop their understanding around some of this. But you do need financial frameworks to decide which opportunities you will pursue. You need business case. You need your business case so that you can articulate your concepts and articulate the commercial benefits of that. And importantly, making sure that you're able to talk to your partners or your investor community around that. I look at the business case is actually enhancing the creative process, because what you have is a foundation to bring those to life. So if you are working with other partners and with investors, or even if you're working in large organizations, when you have a business case and it's clearly articulated, I can guarantee you your probability of moving that forward to the next stage exponentially rises if you have that in place, because it gives people confidence, it gives people trust, and it also gives you direction and clarity. And it means that you've worked through this. And of course, they need a compelling story. And importantly, you need to understand what the cost of inaction is. So what's the cost of not doing something? And you really need to consider that. In your document, it can be you can present this however you want, in a Word document or in a PowerPoint, whatever you want, but you need to make sure that you have a vision and purpose of the initiative, the impacts that it has, how you intend to execute this. What are your timelines? What are the resources you need to do this? What are the risks and opportunities, the high level, and what's some of the key information, financial information and timings that you need. So you might need to know, for instance, you know, interest and inflation rates as an assumption, or what your starting point is, or you know, what your expected incremental revenues are. Now, this is where we're going to, you know, I know that the eyes will start glazing over, and this will take time to work through. But here, what I've done here is given this to you. So you've just got a one page that you can reference and you can talk to people to, and you don't have to take people through a massive document, but this is almost your ready reckoner. But you'd state your vision and impact, what your key assumptions were, your key milestones, your dependencies, what your profit and loss impact would be, what your operating expenditure will be, what capital investment you need, what the impact on cash is. And as I said, I'll let you go through this at your own time, and some of it won't make entire sense now. And even if I gave you an hour on this alone, we probably still wouldn't get to the level of understanding that you need. And I know that in Stanford there's a whole unit on this, but you hopefully there will get the flavor. And the point here is that you can pick this up and have it as a one-page document that you can talk to people, engage with people, clarify your understanding, and then work through. But the important thing that I want to show you in this example is net present value is one way of understanding capital investment, to make sure whether your decision is a good decision when you take into account what you need to invest and what you're going to get back for that over a period of time. And if this project was a 5-year project, for instance, you might look here that, like at year 4 and year 5, that you're saying, oh, good, I'm getting $1.5 million of my revenue, and that's a good thing to do. And I only had to invest, you know, around $2 million in capital and an extra $1 million in operating expenses. But when you actually put it through, it actually says over a 5-year cycle, that's actually negative. And that's actually not a cool idea to do at all. But equally, your assumptions may have changed, where now it's only $1.5 million in operating costs, operating expenditure, or $700,000 in capital. And that actually makes it a favorable scenario. So again, I just wanted to introduce you to the fact that you need to be thinking about your capital investment and what does that mean over a long time. And there's a number of considerations that you need to think about, and that is your rate of return. You do need to think about cash. You do need to think about profit, and you need to actually blend that into something like this. So I'll just scoot through. Just in general financial management, cash is king, and you need to manage or it's queen. You need to manage your cash resource lightly, and you need to make sure you've got that cash resource to continually invest in what you're doing. You will need to balance the need to continue to invest in capital or into your idea, but you'll also need enough cash to run your business when it gets operational. So you need to really think about that and have a clear understanding of that. Now, this is where a lot of people go wrong. Every dollar that you invest, every customer, every site, every geography, every website, I don't care what it is, whatever it's equipment, every product, every piece of inventory. I say here, pull their weight. I don't know if that's a common global thing, but in Australia, we say pull their weight, which is just simply, it needs to provide a return for every dollar, for every product that you sell. Sometimes there could be a strategic reason that it may lose, but you have to know about that. But everything has to make sense. So some people take on customers and they're loss-making customers. Why you do that, I don't know. And these are the things that you really need to think through. and you need a strong balance sheet to lead through that disruption. What I've done here, so that could be, you would have a one-pager there that you could potentially have, which would have some KPIs and key information. What I've given you underneath all of this is some extra information on income statement, balance sheet, cash flow statement, what some of the key concepts are and some of the key terms are, so that you can start familiarizing yourself with this, and then, you know, how you potentially work through a cash flow forecast, what the difference between an operating cash flow and net income is, so that's profit versus cash, so there's some basic financial things in there that that you can work through at your own leisure, and of course reach out to me if you do have any questions. I know that I powered through that at the end, but I thought I would open it up to the group for questions or thoughts. Everyone's now a commercial and financial guru.
Yeah, I have just one, maybe it's a little bit deviated from this topic, but I was just wondering, we are always like talking about, right, disruption, like especially in Asia and Japan, right? Disruption is not necessarily, like, a lot of change is done in iterations there. So like companies that don't disrupt but make changes by like through iterative processes.
Yep.
Is that so what do you think about that? Is that does it have potential, or is it really you always have to go for total disruption?
It's a great question. So the biggest transformation that I've been in, and the most successful one that I've been involved in, did both. So and the benefit of the iteration model is as much around making sure that at an organizational point of view, that they have, at an organizational level, there's a culture of improvement and incremental benefit. And we have to remember, lots of little wins make a big win, right? And a lot of people forget that. And disruption, innovation does not, in fact, most cases, it doesn't have to be the big thing. What you do need to do is you need to give your people the resource and the time to be able to do that properly, though. And if you don't do that, and this is why the financial management and the resourcing becomes so important, and that you give that you're able to assess the success of this, so that you allow people to go through an incremental phase. There will be some organizations or some industries that doing something incrementally will just be too slow, but it will, again, I think it's one of those things where it depends. But the example that the company that I was talking about, the most successful one, they went from being basically a bankrupt business to being Australia's most profitable department store. And they did that by doing some massive, big steps, big changes, but they did exactly what I've said here, which is, and what I said in yesterday's session is, they fixed the basics right to give themselves a foundation to go to the next step. They didn't try and, other than start a new business, they had to do it in steps, but they had part of the business doing little steps to keep it moving forward. But in other parts of the business, they'll focus on, like, for instance, they may have said sourcing. This year for sourcing, we're going to take it from here to here. Yeah, but in store operations, we're happy for it to be little incremental. And then in 3 years' time, stores may have gone from here to here. I'm not sure if that helps.
Yeah, no, that was great. Thank you, Matthew.
But look, if anyone does have any questions or thoughts or whatever, just please reach out. I know there's a lot in there, and it was an hour, so unfortunately we don't get the time to sort of dive into the detail, but there is a workbook there and you can start familiarizing. And remember, the purpose of this was to familiarize yourself with it, not to become an expert, because there's a lot that goes in this. But as you're doing your idea to MVP, and you know, like the intent will be to take that further, I'm assuming, is like my message remains the same, is think about this now. Don't let it monopolize your time, but think about it so that you can set yourself up for success for the future. And you know, it is commercial. It is what you're doing. Even if it is a social enterprise, it will have commercial consequences, and you do need to think about those to set yourself up for success, because that's the game, that's the field that you're playing in.
Thank you so much, Matthew. I mean, I think it was a very, very informative session, and definitely a lot of things to grasp here. And I'm sure the workbooks are going to be very helpful as well for all the participants. I do want to tell everyone that, you know, Matthew had actually designed this or redesigned or curated the session, especially for you guys in the LISA cohort. So a very special thank you to you, Matthew, for stepping up and doing that. And I really like the ideas that you presented about, you know, I mean, of course, business case and financial models and all of those things, but also to think about risk and opportunities right from the start, or regulations from the start, because most people forget about them. And regarding regulations, I mean, I just wanted to bring one more perspective. Is one is what needs to be done to be secure, but there's another way to look at it is like, even if there are certain regulations that you think that you don't need them, but they can provide you with extra, let's say, you know, something extra that you can provide to your customers. For example, privacy by design sometimes, right? You know, getting following certain rules like GDPR, or getting B Corporation certificates or sustainability certificates, depending on what your business is. I think I've personally been working a lot on this as well, that, you know, it really matters a lot that how you can differentiate just by getting those extra governance and regulation models and thinking about risks and opportunities. So great.
I worked with one company. I worked with one startup, Deepti, and they barreled millions of dollars into something. And then they had an idea that they needed this government regulation or or certification, but they didn't really focus. They were just so focused on other things, and it basically nearly collapsed the whole concept. And they'd already barreled a lot of money into it. Unfortunately, they were able to self-correct it, but with a lot of pain. And if they actually had sat down with a glass of wine and it worked through something like this at the start, they actually could have saved a lot of time and heartache. And again, I think don't take it too seriously. I mean, take it seriously, but you only have to just sit down and just think about it. Just think it through.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the more you think about it, the more you're going to also kind of place certain things, you know, as mechanisms to kind of beat that as well. So thank you so much. We did run over time a little bit, but we also started late, so I think that's allowed. Thanks again. And all of you guys will receive an email with today's and yesterday's workbooks together with Matthew's best-selling book as PDF as well, Fit for Disruption. So hopefully you guys will enjoy it over the weekend. Thank you so much for joining me, guys.
Thank you. Please reach out if you need anything, just or even if you just got any little questions to clarify. I'm happy to support you on that.
Thank you.